Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Send me in peace to the rest of you. Hit the share button because the message is more important than the messenger. Sajid Lippam studied for years in Saudi Arabia and doesn't make up things regarding the religion. I'm glad he doesn't. Sajid Lippam gave a religiously appropriate answer in a normal context to a question that a woman asked him. A woman said, is it advisable for a single mom to look for a husband? She said, many brothers are warning against us. Now, here's the kicker. We don't have anything in our religion that is against either single parent remarrying. But the Muslim men are beginning to tell each other, listen, sidestep these single moms. And it's gotten to the point that this lady had to ask Sajid Lippam a question regarding that. Is it smart for us to even try at this point because they're warning against us? And his answer, like I said, is very appropriate for a normal situation. It's advisable for any single person to look to remarry. Any single person look to marry, and any divorced person, well, any healthy divorced person who's not causing divorces, let's say, to look to remarry. This is what wound up standing out, sort of jumping out at us later on. See, this is coming from Red Pill Awareness. And this, I'm pretty sure, is a Western sister, Muslima, that asked the question. I don't know if she was black or white, but I'm pretty sure that she was a Western woman. She's rather she converted to Islam or was born to Muslim parents. I am quite sure that she came out of the West. She grew up in the West. And therefore, this was necessary. This question was necessary because she can't get what she used to get as easily as either she or anyone else in her predicament used to get it. It used to be that Western Muslim women that were single moms could easily find stepdads. Wasn't that difficult? I was one of the only men I knew sitting up and saying that if you don't have kids, why would you marry a woman that has them? And I did not necessarily say the same in reverse. I understood if women said it. But the thing is that I didn't say the same in reverse because I also understood that a single mom is going to double bill for her kids, whereas a single dad is not allowed to turn to the stepmom and say, can you look after them? Because she doesn't owe them anything. And everybody's going to tell him that. He's going to be told multiple times what nobody else owes to his kids except they mama. And that's it. So therefore, he's going to be checked because, especially amongst us black folk, we men are always being checked. Everything is about checking us and telling us whatever is not pleasant to say. I mean, you know, black women don't really even believe that they're being honest with you until they tell you something that's not convenient to you. That's the only way they believe they're being honest. If the truth is convenient to you, then they think that the smart thing to do was to fuck the shuck up and not say anything at all and keep that away from you because, well, that's convenient to you. That's just going to make things easier for you. And why would they do that? So that tells you right then and there that as far as they're concerned, your job is to suffer. That's how they view it. That's how they view you, as owing some debt of suffering most of the time. So you really can't sit up here and look at sisters like y'all can share something special or anything of that nature. You can't, because they can't view you like that. They look at you and they think, well, especially if I'm cute, then I only owe him a hard time. So I stated before in the last upload that when you noticed, a lot of you guys did notice at some point, that you were being approached only by chicks with kids, or only by big women, or in other words, you could be in shape, childless, and doing well financially for yourself, and you would only get approached by chicks that were out of shape, or baby mamas, or financially doing bad. You only got approached by them if something like this was the case, making it a mismatch. Many of you did not know after a while, you know what, it's a mismatch. Many of you adjusted your thinking because of the reality, unaware that they had artificially constructed the reality in the first place, that they had set up there an agreement that they were going to force a mismatch like this. Now the gig is up. At this point now, it's known. This is not an accident. It's not just how it turned out, that it is very deliberate, actually, and that these women know that it's deliberate, and they're not playing these games with you anymore. That you're not playing these games with them anymore. That really they were playing nothing but games with you to make sure that you didn't have any options that were similar to the option you had to be, that you had to work hard to make yourself. And now, because of this discussion between the men, single mothers in the Muslim community can't just walk up on a stepdad anymore. And they're being warned against. Now, what is the reason for that? Well, a lot of these women will tell you they don't really like a lot of the guys they see. So the Muslim men now in the community are beginning to say, avoid them. What's the reason? They wouldn't be with you if they didn't have these kids. That's what a lot of these brothers are beginning to tell each other. How else are you going to sit up and tell these men to avoid women for something that is very natural to them anyway, which is to become parents, which is natural to people? It is because these men understand that they are being profiled, and the majority of them are being profiled by these women as such, only good for raising somebody else's kids. Damn sure not their own. Now these men know it's not a coincidence. It didn't just happen. They know that they're not crazy. So the Muslim men now are taking this rhetoric into the Muslim community with us. And I have a mixed feeling about it, because on one hand, even if you're not Muslim, but you're nice, then what that means to me that I want for you is good in this life, and ultimately the guidance that will lead you to better in the next life. But it does not mean that I want us imitating you. It's not our job. We're supposed to be role models. But to be honest with you, we've had to take this because we ourselves have practiced the benefit of the doubt. It's called husn al-dhan in Arabic, and it is taught in multiple languages to many Muslims, and that means you don't assume the worst when there is a doubt. It's the same thing as saying benefit of the doubt in English. Here's the issue, though. Just like Bilal of the Features has said that when Muslims show white supremacist leanings, you remove that. You stop giving benefit of the doubt and start doubting their benefits. I know that because just like there is a racial war for the hearts and minds of black folk and Muslims, let alone black Muslims, that there is also a gender war for the resources of normal men. and not the DNA. I know that there is. And so, since the Western Muslimas have decided to take this same gender war into the Muslim communities with them, and now even some non-Western Muslim women are trying to take this gender war into their countries, that now the Muslim men have had to turn around and point these things out as well to each other. They have to. It's not that I want to see us take on other groups' ways per se, but human beings inevitably have to learn from each other. And unfortunately, this was necessary. And I'm going to look at Muslim dads, be they fathers, daughters, sons, daughters, or both. Most were both. I'm going to look at them and I'm going to say to these dads, and I'm going to say to some imams that knew these things, and I'm going to say even to some of the reformed players that became Muslims and knew these things, it was your job to tell Muslim men these things. And some of you did. That's actually how a lot of this information came to many young Muslim men. But it was your job to fill in these gaps long before Andrew Tate said that he's Muslim. That was always your job. If you knew, you were supposed to say something. You didn't have to badmouth innocent women in order to do it. And many Muslim men who somehow did know these things didn't want to tell young Muslim men or boys these same things because they didn't want to sound like they were bad-mouthing innocent women. And that's a noble intention. But when Muslim women were sitting up, just like non-Muslim women, in their hair salons and in their girls groups and this sort of thing, talking about the men and their husbands and how to manipulate and all of these things, when they were sitting up and talking about stuff like this is where the problem came in. No one sat up in front of them and said, hey, you know what? These men don't deserve that. That's why I take issue. No one sat up and said this to them. Hey, listen, you know what? We're talking about exploiting. We're talking about manipulating them. We're talking about only giving head so you can get jewelry to show off to each other. This is the type of stuff we're talking about. Do they deserve this? What the F, man? It was the same thing. So because what we have seen is that Muslim women, sometimes even in traditional areas, will play some of the same games. And therefore Western Muslim women will play all of the same games as non-Muslim Western women will play. Now Muslim men have to be as aware of these games. And one of the games we'd already know that the crux of the game is you get one guy for his genes and you get someone else to raise the kids. And you don't look for them in the same man. Studies have already shown that women would pick out or they will have a preference for different guys based on their own fertility. The more fertile they are, the less of a father they look for. Can you imagine that? Like a demon that sits up on their wombs and tells them, okay, now that it's your best time to conceive, start looking for these dudes that are, on one hand, genetically sound and fit. That's not wrong per se, but on the other hand, less likely to pay attention to children. Now don't sit up and tell me, well, that's biological. That's not biological, that's demonic. Wanting health or preferring health for yourself and for your kid, that makes perfect sense. But specifically looking for guys that would be less likely to pay attention to their kids, now that's some shucked up fit. That's not what they want when the kids actually show up. They're not looking for that. So why are they looking for that when it comes time to conceive? It doesn't matter why. It doesn't work. It's not fair. And they would never tolerate something like this from you. So don't even try to come with an excuse. It's okay if you understood it for the sake of understanding, maybe to defeat it. But that's if you even want to go that far. No, bitch, you control this about yourself and or exercise this out yourself, or you're going to lose us. And I'm glad to see that Muslim men are willing to, at this point, sidestep that dual mating strategy so much so that even if a woman wound up being a single mom and didn't plan on that, she doesn't get to just luck up on a childless man to be stepdad. And don't come to me and say, well, Khadija had kids before she met Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, because she's Khadija. Just like you'll sit up and say that we ain't Muhammad, you ain't Khadija. You can barely stand a man the same height as you, let alone a man that's younger than you, even 3 years, which is probably the real age difference between her and Muhammad, not 15, according to some historical sources. But even if he's 3 years younger, you all take issue. Here she was marrying a man most of you believe to be 15 years younger than her, did not have the money that she had, and was not required to take care of her kids like he was their dad. They were never named after Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Of course, I'm sure he treated them well. He wasn't one to mistreat anybody. But by the same token, did he say, I'm the dad, I'm the only one you come to for these responses? And they were widow. I mean, she was a widow. That dad was dead. He didn't say, okay, well, you know what? I'm just going to change their name to my name. Yeah, you see, when we sit up and start talking about what Khadija did, women never had to be prophets. And so it would make more sense to hold them up as examples for you, even than for you to hold LBRY's examples up for us. You want to talk about the LBRY, the prophets that we're not, which is correct. We're not prophets. But when we hold non-prophet women, because women were not burdened with being prophets, we hold them up for you as examples because they actually were examples for you to follow. You have a greater potential to be like them than we do to actually be like a prophet, because we can't receive revelation. Prophecy's closed, and you want to turn around and just completely disregard the fact that you got a greater potential by default to imitate Asiya or Khadija. May Allah be pleased with them. But you'll sit up and say, you can't do the very same things Khadija did. Or you can't do it. He younger. Girl, I can't do it. He younger. Girl, he got less money. I can't do it. And some of you, girl, he ain't got no kids by this time. I can't do it. That's when you're childless. But then when you a single mom and he ain't got no kids, girl, I can do it because I can use him. Khadija was not looking to dump her kids on him. And not only that, but there's some hadith that she actually managed to get her dad drunk. This is before there was any injunction, before he was even a prophet, let alone receiving revelation against drinking. But as she managed to get her dad intoxicated to get him to agree to the marriage. She was trying to get a good man before he was even a prophet that was younger than her and didn't have the wealth she had. And here you are talking about what you can't do. He can't be younger. He can't be shorter. He can't have less money. Now, you don't mind him being a baby daddy if you ain't got no kids, but then as soon as you got somebody else's kids, now you want him to have none. So yes, I want you Muslims to understand in the West that these men have to warn, because we already have a confession from Danielle Cazot, who took this post down, by the way. But the screenshots have remained up. I have it. we have a confession from her that stepdads are the men single moms would not date if they didn't have kids. And this is something that many of us have already known subconsciously or consciously anyway, but we're told to not say out loud because it sounds paranoid and insecure. No. A man ain't got to be paranoid or insecure to understand how low a value he's going to have by default in women's eyes. You just want to make it sound like this, when in fact that's exactly what the F it is. Surround the truth with accusations of delusion for those who understand it. Excellent as a strategy until it doesn't work anymore. Now, anytime men start picking up on patterns, you start saying they're imagining this. Every time they pick up on a pattern, you say they're imagining this. You're doing the exact same thing that the non-Muslim women have done, but you were supposed to be held to a different standard, i.e. Khadija as an example, or even some of the other Sahabiyat or wives of the Prophet, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But you have taken to certain games that now have caused even really unintentional, unplanned single moms to miss out because y'all had to be warned against. If you weren't going to call out these games, if you really want to know the truth, it wasn't just the job of inexperienced or knowing men in the Muslim community to tell these young brothers what the games were. The first responsibility for that was on those of you who knew what these games were and did not. Tell the men, your brothers, your sons, your husbands, your cousins. You who knew and did not say anything are going to share in these same results that the non-Muslim women you emulated and followed are going to get. The men have picked up on patterns. And that's the end of it. And because you tend to if you really want to know, see, a lot of you Western Muslim women are going to start asking Western Muslim men pretty soon why they won't communicate, because a lot of African American women that ain't Muslim are asking black men, talk to us, tell us what's going on, why are we not getting together no more? They're asking for communication, and we're given a wall of silence because we have to. It doesn't do any good to explain what we can see. We sit up and say, okay, well, we can pick up on patterns, and this is the pattern. Well, did you ever think that maybe you? Oh, God, no. Don't sit up and say it was us. We didn't have the option of it being us. The pattern was there no matter what. But now that we notice it, you want us to think we might be delusional and imagining it. No, the pattern's there. This is something y'all are doing. I'm asking you why y'all are doing it, and you want to sit up and make me think maybe it's not something y'all are doing. And many women who don't do these things still know that these are patterns, and you don't have the heart to tell these men, you know what? Yes, they're doing this. You think that the men can't handle it, when the fact is the men could handle you telling them that it's actually a pattern that they're seeing correctly and that these patterns are intentional. What men can't handle is you telling the men that it is their fault that women are mistreating them these ways when the men aren't doing anything to provoke it. That's what men can't handle. Because that means, because that's not something anybody can handle. Oh, wait, you mean it's my fault that they're doing this because I look like I do? So because of who I don't resemble, they can't help but mistreat me? Of course, nobody can handle that. Man or woman, child or adult, no one can. Because you're saying that other people's decisions are your fault when you're not doing anything to provoke these decisions. So instead of realizing that you could easily tell men and they could handle it if you sat up and said to them, look, they're doing this because of who they are. It ain't your fault. You ain't got to do nothing to provoke it. They're trained and socialized to do dumb stuff like this. That's what it is. If it ain't your fault, it ain't your fault. You just didn't know. So no, it's not your fault. You didn't know. You didn't really have to even provoke this. So it's not your fault. However, that's what they're going to do. You're right that you're seeing a pattern, because you know that at that point, the men are going to realize, okay, they're going to do this. It's not my fault. that is the perfect justification for these men to write off the demographic block of the women that are doing these things to them, playing these games. And you Muslim women are going to have to admit that. You will understand that these men, while they should not necessarily run to disbelieving women to replace you, that they may have to go to believing women in third world countries or places that you don't think are good for women to grow up in. They're going to have to go to those places to find women that can appreciate them. That means that now all of a sudden, for growing up in places with a nice standard of living, you now have a cost you got to pay. You can't get your man because you can't appreciate it. And if you can, he doesn't know you can. You're too rare. So you know what? You're just like anybody else. Just like the ones who can't appreciate him, you lose out too, and you know it. This is the real reason why many of you who do know have made it your mission. You've made it your goal to not say what the F it is. Because you know. You know what it means. If the conversation goes the way that it really needs to go in order to be honest, then you know that what it's going to do is it's going to tell these, just like black men are now realizing from these conversations, okay, you know what, we can't pursue black women no more. She needs to come to us with her stuff together and lust in her eyes in order for me to think that it might be real, because otherwise I know I'm second string. I'm not a thug. She wants a thug. That's who she's waiting on to approach her. She gonna leave me for that. And if I'm a thug and a pookie, then she wants the rich dude. Or maybe just a richer, more successful thug and pookie. It's always, these brothers have come to understand that if they're not going to be thugged out, that they're going to have to stop pursuing black women. Well, then you realize that Muslim men are going to understand that if they're not going to be the Muslim Chad, so to speak, young and rich, which most human beings are never going to be, simultaneously especially, that he's not ever going to be your type and you're never going to treat him like it. And so you know what? Why go to you? He'll never make enough money for you to respect him. He can't buy your respect no matter how much money he does make. It's going to make perfect sense. He's going to take his happy country behind to the southern Philippines, or maybe those Muslim enclaves of Cambodia, or southern Thailand, or Indonesia. Find one of those ladies, marry her, and may even stay where she's from, because that way she'll always appreciate him, to increase the chances of that marriage staying together, because he wasn't planning on leaving anyway. But he can't say the same for whomever he marries, especially if he decides to give you a chance and marry you. That's what you're looking at. The job of the Muslima was to spill the damn beans, just like the job of the other women was. And that's not something y'all did in the West. Even in traditional societies, y'all are too quiet about it. You're secretive about these games, but not all of y'all are playing them per se. And that's bad enough. We got guys talking about stick with high interest women. The problem, I mean, I guess that's okay in other societies, but in the West, you, the Muslim woman, were no better an option. Ask me how I know. You, the Muslim woman of the West, were no different, no better an option than the Muslim woman, than the disbelieving woman. And sometimes you were the worst because you sat up and said, well, God gave me the right to demand whatever dowry, so I'm going to demand this unaffordable dowry, and then I'm going to sit up and blame you men if you can't make it. And when I get older and I still ain't got somebody that can afford the dowry, I'm just going to talk about what all kind of crap you ain't, instead of admitting that I was materialistic and God gave me the right results for that materialism and I lost. Oh no, I'm not going to sit up and say something like that. No, it's you actually were using a right that God gave you to try to justify being even more difficult. And you sat up there and you've even led more so than non-Muslim women. You sat up and told each other, girl, you got to be difficult for these men to appreciate you and love you and cherish you. You got to be difficult. No, the hell you don't. And you don't respect the men on whom that would work anyway. But y'all sat up and you all were telling each other this advice even more than the non-Muslim women were. I had to tell this to my wife. She was like, women said that you got to really be difficult and that sort of thing. You got to make things difficult or he's not going to appreciate you. And I had to tell her, if you listen to your friends and you do something like that, you would be telling me you don't want me. That's what that means. I'm one of those guys that knows about these conversations, and I'm telling you they're BSing. Ask yourself how many of them are happily married. Their husbands love and respect them. They love and respect their husbands, and they talking all that crap. Ask yourself that question, because in reality, if you make things too easy for any guy, they might not feel like you really care. But if you make things difficult for that guy, that means there's just somebody else. That's the truth of the matter. Don't you listen to them. The day you decide you're going to try to make things difficult for me to see if I'm going to appreciate you more is the day I'm going to think that there's some other man you want, because y'all just don't do that when y'all really want to marry somebody. Now, does it mean I would take you for granted? Only if you took yourself for granted. That's what I had to tell her. Because her friends were saying this crazy stuff, and she was trying to figure out, she was nice enough to come and ask, what does that really mean to men? And is that true? That was smart of her and wise of her to ask the question so that I could tell her, no, that's BS. And we know that. There were men, when I was growing up, there were men that thought that way, I like a challenge, and they were dumb niggas. It never worked out for them either. And what wound up being the case was that they had women that cheated on them. I like a challenge. I like for a woman to put up some resistance. Okay, well, she found some other guy and she didn't put up any resistance and she screwed him for free, and you had to be the provider to get cheated on. Well, damn, man. And some guys would say, well, I would even ask for a prenup. I would just put in the marriage contract that infidelity will forfeit any claims of alimony in the event of a divorce. I just put that in the marriage contract. Okay, guess what? She'll just go extra hard to make sure that she never gets caught cheating. That's all. So that you'll still be on the hook for alimony. She will do anything to play these same games at your expense. She will bend any part of creation she can bend to do it. You'd have to get a PI to find out that she's cheating and prove it. If you put that in the contract. She will not knowingly forfeit resources without working. The game is that vicious. And if the Muslim women in the East and in the West had been more forthcoming with this information, then, the truth be told, our community in terms of marriages and low divorce rates would have been exemplary for others to follow. I'm not going to sit up here and put this off on the men, because you had a few serial monogamists marrying one, marrying another, marrying another, marrying another, with divorces in between. I'm not going to sit up and do that. You had that in non-Muslim communities. The difference is that amongst the Muslims, you just had more women willing to demand that there be a marriage first. And these guys went ahead and married. And, you made it very easy because y'all wanted the same guys too. It was the same thing. You weren't sitting up and actually questioning your mate selection criteria when you became Muslim. And some of you were raised by Muslim parents from birth, and you still never had the ability to sit up and critically think about it. You just looked at the non-Muslims that grew up around you and you said, I want the same things they have. I want what I think they have. Oh, they can all share the same few men. Well, that's not fair. She gets to be a hoe and marries the hunk. And I don't. And so you balked and y'all wanted to share the same few men and you did. And now you've got second generation Muslims marrying and then finding out they got the same father. It's not common, but it has happened before. And what's the reason behind it? Because you're an idiot. You looked at the same thing, the same results, and you said, I'm not going to be any different. I'm not going to tell, even because of what I won't even tell my son what he needs to know. Or my younger brother, no damn way. I'm going to play the same games that Susan's playing and get the same damn results one way or another if I got to sacrifice my younger brother or my older, any of my own male relatives to do it. We want the same deal. And now you're getting the same deal. The non-Muslim man will fly to Thailand to find his wife. Or he may even fly to Thailand just to pay for play, but he'd rather do that and wife her up than to wife you up. Because at the very least, she'll play the role. And the Muslim man, he will fly his butt to the southern Philippines or to Indonesia or other places, and he'll wife her up. Fly to Morocco. She could have no degree at all, and he'll wife her up. What's the reason? Because she'll play that role and she'll appreciate it. She'll act like she appreciates it. She finds out he likes something, she'll cook it. Different things like that. You, oh God. Half the time, you, just like the non-Muslim woman, even more so, will judge your success and your value by how unhappy that man is. And you will surpass the non-Muslim woman in that sometimes because, or you'll do it under the idea that God created man to suffer. No, he created us to worship. Human beings and both genders, to worship him. But you oftentimes will take the church notion that we were put on here just to suffer, and then you want to sit up and judge how good, you judge your value by how much he suffers. And you're getting the results of that. Doesn't matter what kind of degree you got, nothing. None of that. He will take that 24-hour flight or however long it takes, go to wherever it is, some third world village, and meet her and her dad and her brothers and talk to her. I know because my son did. And jump clean. He will literally fly clean over you to do it because even you, the Muslima, don't want to sit up and say, you know what, younger brother, older brother even, you know what, son, these are the games that they gonna play. And this is how you sidestep that because you shouldn't have to go through this. And what's the reason they gonna play these games? Because they want things that are mutually exclusive. They want to have their cake and eat it too. We all want it, but they're demanding and expecting this. They're playing their game so that they can have the cake and eat it too at your expense. So when this woman posed this question to Sajid Lippam, I'm not blaming him for the answer that he gave in a normal situation. I don't know if Sajid knows much about Red Pill. He may know it exists. I don't think he knows enough about what it is. He talks about I think that was him that talked about some of the masculinity preachers. Look, let me just say it, Sajid. Look, it's not that what you said was religiously wrong, but there's a fiqh al-waqi of this. There is an understanding of current events that was behind her question. And it would probably take the same thing to give an accurate answer for the context in which he's asking. Sajid, these men need to know that especially if they are childless, these single moms are seeking them out because these single moms think they're good stepdads, but they wouldn't be good actual biological dads because they see these men as genetically inferior. And that's some, that's some Hitler type stuff, except opposed or applied to gender instead of race. And that's what these men are reacting to. There's a dual mating strategy, Sajid. Chimps practice it. We're not chimps. And that's exactly why it is we don't forgive each other for trying to practice that. But these ladies are sitting up here and they're willing to give in to biological urges at men's expense, just as they sit up and tell men to not give in to biological urges at their expense. And that's the context behind her question. And this needs to be known. You got a bunch of men out here and women are sitting up and looking at the normal men, run-of-the-mill men. These women are sitting up and looking at these normal run-of-the-mill men and saying they don't deserve to have their own children. They don't deserve to be a woman's first when they marry this woman. In other words, the end of her virginity. They don't deserve that. They really don't deserve to have sex at all, married or not, but they damn sure don't deserve it on equal terms. He waited, she better not have waited, because he's not worth it. He's childless, she needs to bring her kids to him. She's childless, he needs to be a baby daddy already so that she doesn't feel like she's sleeping with a loser and having his kids first. That's how they're judging us, Sergeant. And that's what the men are reacting to when they start warning against a lot of the single mothers. We're warning against Western Muslim women in general, Muslim women even raised in the West, let alone born and raised in the West. We're warning against them in general, even when they ain't got kids. I was on Facebook and I got this Muslim woman trying to tell the men what we owe to the community and even to other men's kids. And I said, what's owed to the men in exchange? And she gave me a khutbah, a sermon about why nothing's owed and how unmanly it is of me to even ask. I haven't responded. This is my reply. You want to know? There it is. She was on that stuff. Yeah, she African American. Born and raised in the West, whether she was born Muslim or not. She's born and raised in the West, and she's going to put, knowingly or not, she's going to put some of the Western ideology well ahead of the man's rights in Islam. It's for many of these Western raised Muslim women, you will sit up and take your rights in Islam and then your rights under feminism, and even then, the man's responsibilities under Islam so that you never get to his rights under Islam. Because you don't want him to have any rights, just like the Western non-Muslim woman doesn't want the Western man to have any rights. You want the same thing, but you want to import it into the religion and change the religion to suit that. Man, shuck that fit. You can't keep a man? How about this? Let's not ask why you couldn't keep him and what he was like that you couldn't keep, why he wouldn't be kept. Let's not ask that. When that kid is 7, the custody goes to the dad. Now, you want to find another husband? Go ahead. But the custody of the kids goes to the father. You can find another husband now. So you all want to keep the custody of the kids past age 7 against the dad's wishes, using the non-Muslim courts to do it, and then you want to sit up and ask why it is that these Muslim men are warning against you when you were single mom, and these men ain't single dads. These men know what the hell it is. These men understand it's all about they give, you take, and the minute they start asking for anything in exchange, you're mad. You're feminist, and you're putting it in front of Islam. And God don't like ugly even in our faith. That's why she had to pose a question to Sajid. That's why we have to have the discussion in the Muslim community. That's why it is that we have to have this discussion in the context of it already occurring outside of the community instead of the discussion starting within our faith community and moving outward from there, making us the example that and role model we were supposed to be from the very beginning. That's why. A lot of Muslims, traditionally speaking, thought that it was a bad idea to discuss marriage with their single kids. No, it wasn't a bad idea. How you going to prepare them? Now look at you. I hope that what I've said helps. Thanks for listening. As always, black heart, black mind, blackout, assalamu alaikum, black heterosexual non-select male power because they don't like it in black patriarchy until extinction of Judgment Day. Thank you for flying with us again here on Jet Black Airways, where the phrase jet black is also a verb. Keep jetting black with us until the wings and the wheels fall off. Gender, justice, forever.